Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach at Defend, Publish, and Lead. And welcome to episode 134, Where to Get Writing Project Ideas. I do have some slides to share for this episode. And if you are on audio only, I'll just let you know what the ideas are. But also, if you want to check out these slides, you'll be able to see those in the show notes where this episode is posted. I got the idea for this episode because I was working with a group of PhD students that were thinking about what projects they might work on after their dissertation. And one of them said that basically all the ideas that they could think of were ideas related in some way to their dissertation content. And so they were wondering what happens once you work through all the chapters, all the content, all the ideas or the offshoots from dissertation work. Another group of scholars that I worked with a couple of months ago was working on a current project that they enjoyed very much. It was a collaborative article that they were doing together, but they really wanted to do something else together. And they were trying to brainstorm some different directions that they could go, but the project that they were already working on stemmed from a certain event at a conference, and it was kind of a one-time really one time only opportunity for them to collaborate on this particular subject. So they were left with a blank slate about what they might work on next time. And so in this episode, I'm just going to talk through 4 places that I get ideas for writing projects regularly. And so when I start thinking, okay, I've published that thing, maybe this other project got rejected, I've got this third idea that I'm only going to make a conference presentation, but I'm not necessarily going to do anything else with. And for the record, for those of you that are interested in doing things with conference presentations, we are running a series on that. So I'll say more about that at the end. But let's just say that there's some content that you have now finished, or you can see that you're at the end and you're looking for something new to do. These are the places where I get ideas. So one of the ways that I get ideas that's been kind of a regular feeder for me for a very long time has just been looking at a couple of my scholarly journal issues. I don't read as many scholarly journals as I used to, but I still am a big believer in getting them in print. So I get the ones that I can get in print, I should say. So I usually get 3 scholarly journals at a time. I was doing more. I was doing like 5 or 6 where I was trying to read, all the issues every month and that kind of thing. And that I could not keep up with that. That was something that I could not maintain. I'm a big fan of realistic writing practices, so I was unable to do that. But I do keep 3 in the rotation. And so one of the things that I will do with these journals every month is I do try to read them. And what I try to do is look at the articles and see if any of the articles relate to anything I'm doing. And if so, I might read that article and then write notes in the margin to myself about, well, what are some ways I might talk back to this article? What are some ways I might think about how this article suggests something interesting for me to work on, and so on. So I'm actually going to give an example for this one. What I'm showing on the screen is a screenshot of an issue from Journal of Scholarly Publishing. That's one of the 3 journals that I read over the course of the month. But there is an article in here that I have not read yet, but I'm going to pick it for a specific reason. And this article is called "You Might Have to Refute, but Unfortunately the Path to Doing So Might Not Be So Clear, a Case Study." I haven't read this yet, but I have had to do refutation type projects where I might refute evidence. I might have to refute a reader's review of a project or something like that. So I can see, just as something looking very quickly in this table of contents, that might be one that I'll open up and then take some notes on. There's some other things to take a look at in this issue for me. So there's plenty of other things that might be appealing that I might want to look at, because I can see another article in there that's talking about rising star prediction and how we know who's going to be a rising star in a discipline with a systematic way to look at it. And so, this is something that I'll do when I look at my scholarly journals. And I don't necessarily read every article in every journal every month, assuming they're published monthly. But I do try to check this out first and try to relate it to me. And that's where I might get some journal ideas. Another way that I might use a scholarly journal article is just to keep up with a line of inquiry I might be working on or an area I'm working on. So if I work a lot with faculty writing, if I happen to see an article that's specifically about faculty writing, I might start with that, read it and see what new insights somebody else came up with, and then look at, well, does that relate to anything I'm doing? Because sometimes I can use a scholarly journal article that maybe poses a question or asks for some calls to action. I can then say, oh, my new project is in response to those calls for action. Or this is a way that I might be thinking through the question this other author posed in a different way. So sometimes scholarly journal articles can be a launching point for me, and they're not ones that I am finding through a systematic search in a scholarly database. Of course, I can do that, but it's more important for me when I'm trying to generate ideas this way is to look at the latest issues, to see the most current conversations and so on. So current journal issues is certainly one. Another one that I will do is I will regularly look at conference programs. For example, I just went to the Textbook and Academic Authors Association's conference this summer. They are a sponsor of the podcast, and they've provided a lot of good connections with us. So I was happy to attend the conference, but then I also wanted to kind of look at what were some of the keynote sessions at this conference and how might they relate to some of the work I'm doing at Defend, Publish, and Lead, or about some of the work I'm looking at. And one of the general sessions was, and this is what's on the screen for those of you listening, just audio only, but one of them was discovering the 4 C's it would discover the 4 C's of your optimal writing flow. And those 4 C's are calm, cool, connected, and creative. And one of the things I've been looking at a little bit is how people get into a writing flow state. This presentation is about it. I might go back to notes taken on this presentation and kind of see, well, how does this presentation speak to something I might want to say? So conference programs are really good for looking at very specific, tiny ideas and seeing if any of them might relate to something I'm doing or give me an idea of something I might want to explore further. So there's been many times where I've looked through a conference program, looked at a session that was not about anything I would want to necessarily, or anything I might not necessarily consider going to, but then somewhere in there's a little nugget about something that's interesting or maybe a teaching idea, and I can go from there. So it's just a good way to kind of just see a span of emerging research in a discipline. So that's another one that I will go to. I also like looking at higher education or disciplinary blogs just to look at more state of state of the field, and sometimes state of higher education in general. So, I do write a column for Inside Higher Ed occasionally in the career advice. So that's sometimes a spot where I get ideas as I look at what are some challenges facing higher education that relate to my work in scholarly productivity and writing, but also something like Inside Higher Education or the Chronicle, or sometimes Scholarly Kitchen is another one I'll look at, Times Higher Education. A lot of those will have different areas I can explore. So if I'm interested in diversity issues, there's a diversity section I can keep checking. If I'm interested in student issues, I can look in that way. And sometimes people might look at these and just say, well, that's how do you get an idea for maybe a research project or a scientific project from there? But a lot of times these higher education blogs post questions that are really useful for thinking through issues in our discipline. So how might something be measured? What might be a new research method for tackling this challenge in higher education? So that could be another thing that I look at. And then finally, for those of you that watch this on YouTube, you'll notice that I am recording in a different spot. Today, I'm actually recording from the Harvard Center for Hellenic Studies because I am at a week, I shouldn't call it a week, a 4-day training session for Callie on leadership. And this is a group that looks at using ancient leadership in the humanities and exploring many issues that are related to leadership, higher education, how the humanities is relevant to some of the leadership challenges that we explore, and so on. And so what's on the screen right now is me at the Hellenic Center, but also, some posts about it. And where this is coming in for me is that this is a fellowship. I'm interested in the concepts. I haven't written anything about these concepts, but just being here for the 4 days, I've been taking scads of notes about potential articles, different conference presentations, and so on. So sometimes, it might be you're able to get away and do something physical where you can, leave and go to some kind of an opportunity. That I had to travel to do something like this. Sometimes these could be things that you're attending online. But I've found a lot of times professional development, even if it's about something that's maybe not totally related to what I do. So, for example, leadership in the humanities, I'm interested in the leadership angle for lots of reasons. It does relate to defend, publish, and lead, since that's one of the areas that we're working out now. But I'm also kind of working in a new area that I haven't really looked at. So, here we're studying qualities of leadership, and I'm looking at it in a new way I haven't thought about before. And that's really been generative to think about, well, where are some places that I might be able to talk through some of the ideas I want to work out. So I'm putting that out there just to say that, these 4 places, at least for me, when I'm starting to think, oh, I don't have something new to write about, where I might get some ideas, these are some places that I tend to do that. Finally, I did mention working on getting conference presentations turned into a scholarly article earlier in this episode. And we have an ongoing series on Eventbrite, how to turn your scholarly conference presentation into a scholarly article. It's been a really popular series. We're having a lot of success with it. And what this consists of is, if you register, you get a series of 5 shortish videos that describe, and they actually show my process in turning some conference slides and notes that I hadn't done anything with in several years, how I actually started turning them into a full draft of a scholarly article. So if you're somebody that's got lots of these conference presentations around, you want to turn them into something, you don't want that scholarly labor to go to waste, I encourage you to check out that series. We'll put a link in the show notes, and it's also on Eventbrite. Happy writing this week.